Welcome to Points of View, a discussion of issues regarding persons with disabilities, moderated by Doug Usiak.
Today's panelists are Katie Lyons, Director of CASH, Todd Vaarwerk, Director of Public Policy for Western New York Independent Living, and Melissa Golpl, Disabilities Rights Advocate for Independent Living, Niagara County.
Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about self-sufficiency coalitions that seem to be all around the country are popping up, and the purpose appears to be to work with individuals who are either poor or moderately poor in order for them to, and I hope to get this right, to get, keep, and grow income. Well, my first question is that, well, my understanding is that these coalitions are a combination of resources in order to accomplish this. There's federal funding involved, state funding, as well as private funding. But what's the purpose for these programs to go out and to do this type of development throughout the country? Okay?
The whole purpose is to help people become more financially independent. So when you bring a lot of these different resources into the same room, the conversation is what helps people access different services and programs to help them become more financially stable.
So where's the money come from?
Well, it depends on which coalition. There are different funding sources that people can call upon and at different points of the actual work. Currently, our local coalition is funded by federal programs as well as state programs and then local foundations.
Well, I mean, these three key elements of getting money, growing money, or keeping money, and then growing money. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't have money, I mean, where do you get it?
Well, that's really the whole purpose of that get category. How do we help people get more money? And the whole purpose in doing that is linking them up to additional income supports. As it relates to our work, a lot of our attention is based on free tax preparation services and trying to link people to the earned income tax credit. So although they may not necessarily know that there is this money out there that they might possibly be able to claim, it's about creating awareness around additional income supports that they might be eligible for.
Oh, so, go ahead.
So that's really where the whole GET motto comes in. We want to help people learn about different additional supports they might be able to access.
Well, Todd or Melissa, what's the difference between this way of getting money or just the government printing it up and handing it out to the poor?
Well, for low-income wage earners, many times there's some misunderstanding or lack of information and awareness of tax benefits that they may be entitled to by virtue of working. When you're educated and you're taught that if you want to get your refund rapidly, you go to a paid preparer because they have, they'll file it electronically. You could most of the time walk out with a check quickly, but people don't realize that's a loan. If you're eligible for an earned income tax credit because you meet certain criteria, you are a working parent, so you have, one or more children that qualify you, there are free resources in the community, free tax preparers, where it's not going to cost you out of pocket, and you still could get your refund quickly within a couple weeks because they still can file it electronically, just like if you paid out of pocket to a paid tax preparer.
And the other thing with a lot of paid preparers is that they don't understand the disability-specific issues with being able to deal with taxes. They don't understand how a plan to attain self-support would relate to being able to increase your income, or we talk a lot about impairment-related work expenses as it relates to SSI, but there are also work expense tax credits that are available that paid preparers don't necessarily know how to apply for. the VITA people, in collaboration with the local disability agencies, are going to know that stuff.
What's
And
VITA?
Volunteer Income Tax Assistance.
Yeah, but the question I asked is, what's the difference between what you're talking about and the government just printing up a few extra bucks and handing out cash distribution to people who are in need of the money?
Well, this is money that people have already earned. It's not the government just giving a handout. It's people have paid into the system, and because they meet certain criteria, that tax incentive to keep them working, the benefit they receive is based on what they've paid in. And they'll get back what they're eligible for as an earning. People may not have a tax liability per se based on their specific wages and their income bracket, but if they've paid into the system and they've had money withheld from their paycheck because they've claimed so many deductions or zero deductions, they've paid into that system, but they might be eligible for that to be returned to them in addition to a little bit extra. Maybe they had a child care credit, they paid out of pocket child care so they could work. They had impairment-related work expense, which if they did have tax liability, could reduce their tax liability and at some point could turn into a tax credit.
This is about people, allowing people to keep money that they're already making instead of printing up and giving folks money. If you earn the money yourself, you're going to be predisposed to earn additional money. You're going to be predisposed to be more invested in the community that you're in the public transit system that gets you to work. There are a whole bunch of ancillary benefits to being able to work for your money and keep as much of that as possible, as opposed to getting a government check.
So what type of agencies are involved with this type of work, Katie?
The usual partners who are a part of the coalition will be local nonprofits in whatever community who are interested in trying to help people become more financially stable. We have the IRS who serves on our coalition. We have a representative from Social Security. We have different banks and financial institutions, local education institutions, a whole host of different people who want to take part in the work that is going on.
All right, we'll take a brief break here, and then when we come back, we'll look into as to why this is, the self-sufficiency coalitions is something that persons with disability should even consider or be involved with. We'll see you right after the message.
Today, people with disabilities are participating fully in the social and economic life of New York State. In large measure, this is true because of the work of an independent living center in your community. The New York State Independent Living Council is dedicated to promoting the independent living philosophy and to facilitating access to independent living services. For more information on the council or about your nearest independent living center, call toll-free 1-888-469-7452.
Do you need to communicate with your customers, sales force, or employees? Do you need a video, website, CD, DVD, or PowerPoint presentation? Then look no farther than the video and multimedia artisans at Creative Concept Studios. From attention-getting TV commercials to unique trade show and corporate events, from digital video production to website design, Creative Concept Studios, mastering the art of communication. Call 887-3800 today for your free creative concept.
Welcome back. We're talking about self-sufficiency coalitions on how individuals who, I guess, are in need of some financial resources can, Katie, I guess, develop ways, initiate ways of getting money, keeping that money, and growing that money?
It's a combination of all three. So we have been around for quite some time. Self-sufficiency is not a new topic. And generally, the people who are most in need of changing their financial behaviors are people who are in the low to moderate income bracket. And so that's where a lot of our concentration is locally. And probably likely across the nation with the self-sufficiency coalitions. Just recently, we really tried to target people with disabilities because there are statistics nationwide, statewide, locally, basically reassuring the fact that there are working people with disabilities who are not claiming these certain tax credits. They're just left on the table at the end of the tax year, and it's money that people have earned, and it's their own money. It deserves to be in their pocket. And so we use the free tax preparation and trying to help people get more money to link them to different services and programs that will help them keep their money. And those programs touch on financial education and financial coaching, and then onward they go to saving money and building more assets.
And these coalitions assist in the area of keeping that money and growing that money as well?
Yes, the coalition has partners that address all different aspects of finances. So there's people who are involved in the free tax prep, there are people who are involved in the financial education, that middle component, and then there are also partners who primarily focus on home ownership and vehicle purchase and other asset development.
So a question for our disability advocates here. I mean, what's the big connection? Why would, with the message of independent living and being involved and equal access and all of that, why focus a program, quote, for the poor towards people with disabilities?
We are a greatly underserved population. Many people that work in the field who have disabilities are in that low income or middle income bracket. And many of us can benefit from the education that is provided by some of these entities. There are tax benefits or incentives. There's something called the W-5, where you can get advanced earned income credits with every paycheck if you meet the criteria and you file that paperwork with your employer. If that could mean a difference between a car payment that you could afford on a month-to-month basis or versus not being able to access that, that's one of the types of educational tidbits you can pick up in some of these programs. And many of these resources are available free in the community. We just have to get the word out.
Well, and remember that ultimately with independent living, it's the consumer choosing any goal that they want to choose in order to be independent. And for some people that might be a car, for some people that might be home ownership. These are resources that are available to further the independence of people with disabilities and increase their level of community integration. And the amount of money that we spend on these programs is minuscule compared to what happens if they don't spend them and they end up on benefit programs or they end up in institutions where the cost in Medicaid dollars alone can be $75,000 to over $200,000.
How are these programs actually administered? I mean, do you sit down one-on-one and provide counseling, or is it a classroom training, or do you take home a DVD?
Actually, all of the above. So the coalition has about 60 different member organizations, and they represent all different types of agencies and organizations like we were talking about earlier.
Let me just interrupt you there. Is that 60 in some particular region, or is that across the state, or
60 is here locally.
Here being?
In Buffalo.
Okay.
There are different membership numbers, I'm sure, across the board. And I'm not sure if they're higher or lower, but
Okay.
Locally we have about 60 people actively involved. And so each of those members has their own program that they administer. And it could be financial education classes, it could be one-on-one home ownership counseling. It's a combination, so it just depends on which agency and which program.
So how did disability advocates get involved in all this, Todd?
Well, disability advocates get involved because, to start with, services and programs need to be accessible. People with disabilities aren't going to be aware of and use programs if services aren't accessible. I mean, our involvement locally mimics the concept that we were approached primarily to look at how to outreach to our population and to make the services and programs accessible so that they could benefit from them.
So these programs are fully accessible for any person with any disability, Katie?
I can speak about programs locally here, and we are able to make reasonable accommodations for people who require them.
Is there can somebody just walk into the class, or do they need to call ahead, or what?
Again, it depends on which agency they plan to work with. I think it would just be helpful to make that call ahead of time, just to be prepared and to make sure that it's a valuable use of the person who's coming their time.
But wouldn't the advocates, Melissa, insist on the fact that these accessibility requirements be already in play?
Well, we help provide that technical assistance and guidance if an issue is brought to us, and we definitely encourage any of the coalition members to do a self-evaluation, especially since VITA, the VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, is that's being done by the Internal Revenue Service, which is a federal program. We always encourage communication, though, and calling ahead to find out if there will potentially be anything that any individual, whether they have a disability or not, if they need to consider. That includes child care, any other arrangements that need to be made for them to participate in the
And
programs.
advocates always support collaborating with all service providers in order to be able to meet a goal so that everybody understands how needs can be best met.
So as people are interested in this, they start by calling what organization? The United Way in the area, or?
Or there's also another resource that they could probably take advantage of if they do have access to the internet. There is a national initiative, it's the Real Economic Impact Tour, and that is a group that is...
Okay, we're going to have to take a break there. We'll get back and we'll talk about the various components right after this message. Thank you.
Today, people with disabilities are participating fully in the social and economic life of New York State. In large measure, this is true because of the work of an independent living center in your community. The New York State Independent Living Council is dedicated to promoting the independent living philosophy and to facilitating access to independent living services. For more information on the council or about your nearest independent living center, call toll-free 1-888-469-7452.
Do you need to communicate with your customers, sales force, or employees? Do you need a video, website, CD, DVD, or PowerPoint presentation? Then look no farther than the video and multimedia artisans at Creative Concept Studios. From attention-getting TV commercials to unique trade show and corporate events, from digital video production to website design, Creative Concept Studios, mastering the art of communication. Call 887-3800 today for your free creative concept.
Welcome. We're talking about self-sufficiency coalitions across the country, and more specifically here in New York State. And Katie's here to talk about what's going on in the Western New York area. She mentioned the three elements of getting money, and I think we've explored that pretty well. Now we're talking about keeping, and God knows, anybody with a family knows it's tough to keep, as well as growing that money, especially in this economy. Anything you start to grow tends to go the wrong way. So, Katie, I mean, what's the answer to all this? So, you know, how can somebody gets into this program, they're taught how to get some of this money. Take us the rest of the way.
Okay, well, of course, we want to help people get money, and then we want to make sure that they keep that money. And a lot of learning how to keep and manage money is just basic financial education, how to create household budgets, accessing your credit report and making sure that all the information is correct. Just basically making sure that people are aware of where their money is going. And with the keeping, like I had mentioned, it's helping people manage that money. And then there's the grow
Well,
apps.
before we get into the grow, I mean, Todd, if we're talking about population, and I mean, it's no secret that people with disabilities are severely underemployed.
Right.
How do you keep money if you got barely enough money to survive on to begin with?
Well, here's the thing. Part of that is developing financial habits where you're not spending money from check to check. If you live in an environment where you're doing that every month, you're going to develop bad habits like not putting money in a savings account for a rainy day, or not learning about things that you can do for free instead of going to like a paid tax preparer. Part of that financial education is looking at the bargains that you're able to find in order to be able to maximize your money. And that's something that independent living is well aware of in terms of what it is that they train their customers to do.
You're saying there's financial bargains out there, Melissa?
Yes, there are. But I think another key piece of this, the reason independent living centers are so important is one of the things we do for our customers is benefits advisement. If you have someone that's on benefits, keeping that money might put them at risk for losing benefits. We'll provide part of that educational piece so people can understand what the rules are to whatever program they're in and whatever benefits that they might jeopardize, or the types of accounts that are available and resources and programs.
What are some of the, simple and brief ways of keeping money that anybody can do? I mean, other than sticking it under your mattress.
People can have checking accounts, savings accounts. For someone who is getting SSI or SSD, you're actually able to buy savings bonds. Now, that money is held in that form for a long time, but it won't count against any future income or resources that you acquire against the benefits you're currently receiving.
So, Katie, there's nothing new or a secret here, is there?
I think it's just being able to help people reevaluate what their thoughts and beliefs are on money. A lot of behaviors are learned behaviors. Maybe you grew up in an environment, or you just got accustomed to seeing your parents or a guardian or just somebody who you looked up to and the way they dealt with their money manners. And that's something that we just kind of inherit. So if you're able to talk to somebody and kind of rework, if they have a certain amount of income that's coming in, being able to talk through them to make sure that if they are interested in saving money, it doesn't have to be a very large sum. If somebody has earned income, they can save. And it's just being able to talk with people to kind of reinforce that we can all save money.
Well, let's talk about the growing part. I mean, that's the big one. I mean, even the stock market isn't growing. How do you grow money if you're not the federal government?
We are lucky enough to have some individual development account programs across the state, and locally we have one for home ownership and small business startup. And these individual development accounts are essentially matched savings account, and the match rate depends on the program. Here we're looking at a 4-to-1 match for home ownership and a 2-to-1 match for small business. And this is a federally funded program that enables a person to basically quadruple or double the amount of money that they save in order to help grow their assets.
So would HUD and the SBA be involved with those
Yes,
two?
they are.
Okay.
And while that money is in that account, it does not count toward against or doesn't count negatively to affect a person's benefits if they're on any other benefit program. So it's a resource, it's held there, and it's protected so they can still continue to earn more income, retain their benefits, and not put them in a negative financial situation. And I guess locally we have a really high success rate, don't we?
We do, and that number that I shared with you earlier, actually 98% of people who go through IDA programs, specifically for home ownership, there's a 98% success rate. And of course with
That's what? 98%? How do you measure success?
well, for the people who successfully complete the IDA program, the whole goal is to be able to purchase a home. And so nationally, we're seeing that people who are IDA participants who are successful, they have a 98% success rate in keeping their home. So instead of having to go into foreclosure, 98% of the people are actually able to stay in their homes and afford them, which is certainly a higher number, considering what's going on with the housing market, right now.
So Where in the continuum is the special offering towards persons with disabilities, Todd?
Well, this is part of being part of the consortium allows for agencies like independent living and the community agencies that support self-sufficiency throughout the state to bring the disability issues deliberately to the table. This is about understanding how to relate all these pieces together. An IDA plan, a PASS plan, a work incentive, a blind work incentive, a desire to save for a home, a desire to save for a car. These self-sufficiency coalitions can make those dreams become plans that consumers can implement for their own independence. That's the selling point.
And thank you. Self-sufficiency, having the resources to live your life and plan for your future. And there's obviously programs to assist persons with disabilities as far as having them involved as an equal player and accessing the appropriate services and programs so that they also can grow with the community. Thanks for spending your time with us, and we'll see you at the next show.
Points of View is presented by the New York State Independent Living Council, Incorporated, in cooperation with the Catskill Center for Independence, Finger Lakes Independence Center, Independent Living of Niagara County, and Western New York Independent Living. For the location of the Independent Living Center in your area, call toll-free 1-888-469-7452.